Good evening, members of the press, and welcome to this press conference wrapping up the 31st Intersessional meeting here in Barbados. At the head table, we have the Chairman of CARICOM, the Honorable Mayor Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados. We also have the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, Prime Minister of Dominica, and the CARICOM Secretary General Ambassador Erwin LaRocque. We'll start this press briefing first with a statement from the Chairman of CARICOM.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome all the members of the media, and at the outset I'd really like to thank you for your patience and your tolerance over the course of the last few days. I know that many of you may have had different stories, but at the end of the day, you've been waiting now for the formal finishing of this meeting. I'm happy that we have been able, over the course of the last 2 days, to continue to advance the work of the region to the benefit of Caribbean people. This conference will come to be remembered as one in which we laid the footsteps for a number of key decisions. And yesterday morning, we would have started by reflecting that many of these decisions must have relevance to our people. And one of the most significant ones has been the work that we've started, that Prime Minister Mitchell has started with the settlement of roaming rates, a new regime for roaming within the community. The conference has agreed that Prime Minister Mitchell's technical committee will now meet with the telecommunications companies, and that we will await the final implementation of the regime, as well as the other areas of digital governance for which Prime Minister Mitchell has responsibility. We were also able, under the single market and single economy, to be able to take note and to reflect on a number of issues. We are firm of the view that we need to enhance our governance mechanisms, and to that extent, we've asked Prime Minister Gonsalves to be able to pull on technical working groups that were hitherto presented to heads of government and that may bear revisiting again, because of the need for us to guarantee implementation across all of the member states. To that extent, therefore, we anticipate that a report will come to the next heads of government meeting that will review those technical working groups that came out of the Rose Hall Declaration in Montego Bay in 2003. Similarly, we've asked Prime Minister Skerritt, who is the lead Prime Minister on free movement within the region, to bring back up a review of all of the processes to further simplify how people move and whether there should be further categories of persons who should be allowed to move, for example, persons with CSEC certificates, and to be able to ensure that there is a wider pool of persons who can move. And we expect to take that report in July as well. We also agreed that the number of other agreements that have to be signed, some of which have been held up by the absence of the Legal Affairs Committee meeting, but in spite of that, we were able at this meeting to have a number of agreements signed by member states, Dominica, British Virgin Islands, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There were a number of instruments of ratification, and all of these will be provided to you in the communique which the Secretariat will issue. Barbados, Belize, instruments of accession on the part of Belize to CAFSA, which is the Caribbean Agricultural Health and Food Safety Agency, and the Memorandum of Understanding was signed between the CARICOM Secretariat and the United Arab Emirates this afternoon, with the Secretary General signing on our behalf. With respect to the other aspects of the CSME, we took a very comprehensive report from the regional private sector organization and from the Caribbean Congress of Labor. And this perhaps is one of the most pleasing things for me, because as you know, 1 year ago we decided for the first time that we would want to bring the private sector and the Caribbean Congress of Labor to the table as associate institutions of CARICOM. And we met with them and gave them a task which would look at production integration across 4 areas: food security, renewable energy, air and maritime, transport, and ICT, information and communications technology, digital economy. The report that came sets out a pathway towards our being able to work towards substituting 25% of our food import bill, which at the current moment stands at about $5 billion US dollars, that we would look to cut out 25% of that within the next 5 years. What was heartening is that they had a clear plan across livestock and crops, 7 key areas that would save the region 420 odd million US dollars, but also would have the potential to be able to earn foreign exchange outside of the region. Now, this will require action on the part of private investors at all levels, but it would also require further action on the part of governments and the community to make it more seamless for that kind of production integration to take place, from Guyana and Suriname in the south to Jamaica in the north, from Belize in the west to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean islands in the east. And to that extent, we believe that if we can stay the course on these issues, that the people of the region, in the same way that we hope they will see credible benefits to their telecommunications spend shortly, that they will also see in the course of the next few years a Caribbean that is committed to feeding itself more than it has within recent years. We also agreed that this plan and the plan of the Caribbean Congress of Labor would come to the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee, because in both instances, both plans were extremely comprehensive and now require the distillation of the subcommittee that I chair to be able to report back to heads on the basis of an implementation plan, and we have confidence that this will add serious value. One of the problems that has bedeviled the community for some time has been the issue of the CARICOM Development Fund. And we recognize, as I've said over and over, that in any single market, a single economy, there are winners and there are losers. And it is to that extent that Chapter 7 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas speaks to the issue of there being need for a fund to be able to assist disadvantaged countries, disadvantaged sectors, disadvantaged regions. Member states have committed to capitalizing this fund, but this will never be enough to do what needs to be done, particularly with all of the challenges that the region faces at this point in time. Yesterday I outlined a number of them, and we keep seeing new challenges, as we did with the COVID-19 virus. And to that extent, therefore, we feel strongly that we need to revisit the structure of the CARICOM Development Fund and to enable it to be able to raise additional funds, whether from individuals, companies, institutions, regional countries, and extra-regional countries. And why? Because this ultimately is what will drive the development of the disadvantaged countries or sectors that have been taken over, for example, by technological developments that would make these sectors obsolete, or incapable of being competitive, but you need a transition period, or indeed disadvantaged regions, because you may have a country that may otherwise be an MDC, but who has been so affected by a climatic or other event that it needs an injection of capital in order to stabilize it. This is going to be a long-term effort. And this, if done correctly, in my view, is going to be one of the key pillars and anchors of the integration movement going forward. It will allow us to deal with the disparities that exist with respect to size and capacity, and it will allow us to do so in a manner that those responsible for the drafting of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas contemplated would be necessary in order to have as smooth a movement forward, carrying all from the very largest to the very smallest on this integration journey upon which we are committed. So, my friends, I hope that we will appreciate that this policy decision taken by heads of government will make that significant difference, and it will come back to us in the near future. We've agreed that to have 2 meetings a year only is not going to advance the work of the community. And perhaps that is one of the most significant results of this meeting, that we have accepted that we will try to meet at least once a month, even if we do the intervening meetings by means of the technology that connects us. Last year, we were able to use the technology in order to bring heads of government together on a number of key issues. It worked extremely well for us, and we believe that this can now be a part of our normal business. In addition to those things, we recognize, we took the draft final report on the Commission on the Economy, and that will set out a framework for new approaches and strategic interventions necessary in order to unlock further growth in our economies. Regional economies have generally underperformed in terms of growth as compared to other countries and regions across the world within the last 3 decades, and it is not our intention to continue along that line. One of the other major decisions taken by this conference is a recognition that the issue of crime and violence and security is one that we can not believe is the responsibility simply of governments, but that violence in the context of the Caribbean today and crime are effectively public health disorders, public health disease. And to that extent, we believe that it is critical that we bring together not only the heads of government of the region in a summit, but also partners from faith-based organizations to artists to sports people to teachers to CARFA, which is the Caribbean Public Health Organization, to members of the private sector, in order for us to have full and frank discussions about how we as a region, not as individual governments, but as a region, will begin to contain the difficulties that individual communities and countries are experiencing because of a change in behavior, a change in values, a change in attitudes. And we believe that the conversation cannot take place simply at the level of government or law enforcement, but that if we are to win the battle in the medium term, that we need to treat to this as a national and regional discussion and action plan that will see players across every sector of society being invited. I'm happy that the lead Prime Minister on Security, Prime Minister Keith Rowley of Trinidad and Tobago, has offered to host this summit, and that we anticipate that it will be in the near future, but we will await the Secretariat's communication as to what is convenient for everyone. But the message from heads of government is that this is an urgent matter for which we would wish to have a meeting within the next few months, certainly before the heads of government meeting in St. Vincent in July. We also had an update with respect to our continued efforts on the blacklisting from the European Union and other entities, and we have continued to agree that we will put together not just lobbying, but look to see the legal platform on which we stand with respect to the rights of sovereign nations and the extent to which these actions are imposing a threat and an interference into the fiscal sovereignty of our nations. In addition to that, we noted that we will need to pay attention as well to the continued de-risking strategy being pursued by U.S. correspondent banks and related anti-money laundering and counter financing of terrorism institutions. We recognize that the Prime Minister of Antigua has done very good work, and indeed the Prime Minister of St. Lucia would have accompanied him to Washington, D.C. in order to be able to give evidence on this matter, because the consequences in our society are that a number of people are being unbanked. They're being told, come for your money, largely because even where banks have not lost correspondent banking relationships, they are literally constraining and curtailing the activities with which they are prepared to be involved in with respect to the customers who they have. We've also recognized and urged member states to conduct dialogue with domestic banks with a view to encouraging the adoption of a more risk-based approach without compromising their regulatory compliance in order to ensure that ordinary people can open bank accounts and open bank accounts in good time, rather than being told, if you are a returning national, that we want an electricity bill for the last 3 years. Or if you are a young person who has just left school and is now working, they're saying to you at 19 years old, let me see the electricity bills that you have been paying for the last 2 or 3 years before you open a bank. It is an impossibility. And what we are going to have is a society that is divided by those who are included in the formal economy and those who are left to literally fester on the outside because of their inability to establish appropriate banking relations. We dealt also with health. Members, states were updated, and we thank them very much for their updates. CARICOM, who has been really on the front line of the fight against COVID-19. We are happy but not arrogant that we have been able to contain and to manage our affairs such that there has been no outbreak, no single case of COVID-19 within the community. We pray that our efforts and our actions will continue to allow us to be able to say that. But we are conscious that we continue to have to be eternally vigilant with respect to this matter in order to be able to ensure that we provide the best possible protection to our populations, and equally that we will continue to support our people who may still be in China, and to that extent individual member states have been taking their own actions to protect them. We also recognize that there are now 8 member states that can test for the virus, and those results will be made available within 4 hours. And we want to thank the Pan American Health Organization and CARICOM for being able to allow us to be in this position today. To the extent that a member state does not have the testing capacity, we have put arrangements in place to ensure that that member state can access it as soon as possible. And indeed, other regional institutions have come to the aid of those member states because we truly are working together in this matter. Without prejudice to more, the Ministers of Health will stay engaged on this matter for as long as is necessary for them so to do. Heads of government also expressed their empathy and support for the government and people of China as they continue in their efforts to contain the virus. And they noted the fact that this virus does not affect any one ethnicity. This virus does not attack any one gender or any one age group. And therefore, any comments that are directed to people or at people because of their ethnicity are wrong, misplaced, and represent the worst of human behavior that we must not encourage. Similarly, Prime Minister Secretariat is reminding me that there is just simply too much fake news on this. And it is the fake news that cause people to panic and cause people to speak out of turn and to do the wrong things. And to that extent, therefore, we are urging member states to ensure that there are clear communication lines and that we are urging the people of the Caribbean to take only official news on this matter. You have governments that are going to speak clearly and frankly with you. We are not going to put the populations at risk. We are lucky, as I said yesterday, that we have the Joint Regional Communications Center out of Impacts. That is our first line defense in terms of allowing us to be able to see the travel history so that we know first who to start looking for. And secondly, then we have our public health officials, Port Health, at the borders, many of whom have now been further sensitized and trained and are prepared to be able to confront this. So I appeal through you, the media, to our Caribbean brothers and sisters, let us be very focused and take only official news on this matter, because the consequences of panic and fear may well be greater than the consequences of COVID-19, because it is now being seen to be a virus that is not necessarily going to be having the same impact on every age group, and that persons with underlying medical conditions are really those who are more at risk, or persons who are elderly or very young, more so than able-bodied persons. We also took a report from the CARICOM, Caribbean Cardiac Society. And in this report, we were updated to some facts which we have been discussing here in Barbados as well, that the mortality rate for what they call myocardial infarctions, MIs, in the Caribbean is significantly higher than it is in the developed world. And the figures quoted were in the vicinity of 36, 37%, as compared to 7, 8% in the developed world. And the point was made that we are probably doing more on prevention within the region than there are in the developed world, but more people may have a chance of surviving a heart attack in the developed world than here because of the additional steps that we need to take. As a result of that presentation, heads of government mandated that we would wish to build the capacity to address the incidence of heart disease, both in terms of continued prevention as well as in preparation to be able to increase the chances of survival of a person presenting themselves at a hospital within the region. And to that extent, we've mandated the Secretariat, CARFA, and the Caribbean Cardiac Society to produce a draft regional strategy aimed at identifying this and other critical public goods, regional public goods, essential for operating the strategy so that we can reduce the mortality rate. I've spoken about the Roman rates already, and the only other thing that I would like to speak to before handing over to Prime Minister Secretariat, who will largely deal with a lot of the external relation matters and the decisions taken at this meeting, would be to suggest, to share with you that the African Union conference, which met in Addis Ababa last weekend, passed a resolution in support of the establishment of a CARICOM AU formal relationship. And the prelude to that relationship would be a CARICOM Africa Summit that we are looking to have on the eve of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which is taking place in June in Kigali in Rwanda. The CARICOM Africa Summit is likely to take place in Nairobi, and the Secretariat will now, having had the commitment of both the African Union leaders and the CARICOM heads of government, will now move to prepare the formal arrangements for that summit. And to that extent, we would also seek to operationalize. Many of you would have seen in December when we were at the ACP summit that the Kenyans have graciously offered CARICOM and member states accommodation for a CARICOM office. Many of the people of the region may not know that Nairobi actually hosts the largest amount of UN offices in the Southern Hemisphere, and to that extent, it is also the headquarters of the United Nations Environmental Program, which is absolutely critical to the countries of the region who are on the front line of the climate crisis. And also, it is the home headquarters to UN Habitat, which deals with housing issues. And as you know, one of the first things we have to do, or we are doing rather, with respect to fighting the climate crisis and building our resilience is changing how we build in order to ensure that our houses are far more resilient. And perhaps that is the bridge that I will use to pass over to my brother, Roosevelt Skerritt, because he more than most have known what it is to have to change how you do things in order to become more resilient and to withstand the vagaries of climate in today's world. Roosevelt?
Thank you, Chairman. Let me greet all of you, the media. I will first speak not about an external matter because Haiti is a member of CARICOM, and we do not consider matters with Haiti to be of a foreign relation existence. But heads spent the entire caucus period this morning discussing the situation in Haiti. We had an opportunity to review the situation there, and we recognize that this situation is very complex in nature, and the issues there are also of a complex nature as well. And in discussing, we also recognize that there are many different views on the way forward. But we all accepted the situation cannot continue with no intervention on the part of CARICOM. And in that regard, we've agreed to dispatch a team of senior officials led by the Secretary General, Ambassador Larocque, to visit Haiti and to meet with all relevant stakeholders so that we can find some kind of, first of all, to know exactly what's happening on the ground, engaging stakeholders, but also seeking to devise a strategy of how CARICOM can assist Haiti in resolving this issue. Because it is felt that if we do not help address the domestic issue confronting Haiti, we will continue to have tremendous negative impacts on countries like the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas, who are seeing a large number of migrants coming in to these countries and creating some domestic challenges for them. So we need to work with Haiti, we need to work with the various stakeholders in Haiti to find some kind of lasting solution to the current impasse. We also had the opportunity to receive and to welcome the Foreign Minister of Canada. Unfortunately, as you know, the Prime Minister of Canada could not have been with us, taking into consideration some domestic challenges which he has. But nonetheless, we were pleased to receive the Honorable Francois-Philippe Chapin, who set out an agenda for the strengthening of ties between his country and CARICOM. We said to them that we felt that the relationship almost appeared to be on pause, and therefore we need to bring some new life to the relationship between Canada and CARICOM because we have had a very long beneficial relationship between Canada and CARICOM for extended periods of time, even before our own independence. And we also express our appreciation for the assistance granted by Canada in various fields, and we look forward to the initiatives proposed by the Foreign Minister to advance relations. Canada has also made an offer to host a Canada-CARICOM summit in May 2020 in Canada, of which CARICOM has graciously accepted. So we're hoping that this is a clear sign of more political engagement between CARICOM and Canada. We congratulated Guyana on its assumption of the chairmanship of the Group of 77 and China, and we assured Guyana of the required support and accepted Guyana's expression of appreciation. And the upcoming third South Summit in April 2020 in Uganda, under the chairmanship of Guyana, is expected to set the tone of enhancing the unity and cohesion of the group. We believe that the Group of 77 and China is a very important entity for the furtherance of CARICOM causes, and our participation is very important, and therefore we see the assumption of chairmanship by Guyana as a very important step in the direction. Heads of government also reiterated our concern over the enhanced sanctions announced by the U.S. government under the Title III of the Helms-Burton Act, which strengthened the U.S. economic, commercial, and financial embargo against Cuba. The heads denounced as unjustifiable the application of laws and measures of an extraterritorial nature that are contrary to international law. Heads of government also expressed their deep appreciation for the medical assistance provided by Cuba to member states of the community over the years, and that helped build the health sectors to the benefit and well-being of our people. The heads of government also acknowledged that of their own first-hand knowledge, the persons sent had added tremendous value to helping our citizens. The heads of government rejected the statement that this medical assistance given by the Cubans was a form of human trafficking. We felt that the assistance that we've been getting from Cuba by way of the medical personnel could not be considered to be human trafficking of any form. We also dealt with relations with the Commonwealth Secretariat, and the heads of government expressed our gratitude for the range of activities undertaken by the Commonwealth Secretariat, whose added value redounded to the benefit of small island and low-lying coastal developing states. And the heads of government further expressed our overwhelming support for the renewal of the term of office of the Secretary General. And we do hope that when we meet in Rwanda, the current holder of the post of Secretary General will receive the second term in that very important office. And we also engaged her directly and frankly on the issues in the media, and we have accepted the responses given to us by her as being legitimate responses. Did I miss anything else? No. I think, Chair, these are the... Okay. You may do it. Okay. I act on instructions, you know, so...
That's what a big brother tells a little sister all the time.
Heads of government also congratulated Barbados on its selection to host the 5th Quadrennial United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, which will be held in in that member state from 18th to 23rd October 2020. Heads of government also noted that the conference would be preceded by 2 ministerial meetings on small island, low-lying developing states and least developed countries on the 15th, 18th October 2020. I want to end by commending the chairmanship and the leadership of our chairman, Prime Minister of Barbados, Honorable Mayor Motley. I must say, many of us came here with very low energy, but she was able to ignite some high energy spirits within us, to the point where she was able to resurrect a number of documents and decisions which have been on our shelves for extended periods of time. I mean, the Rosal Declaration, which she referenced, was approved first in 2003 and subsequently in 2007. And we had not spoken about the Rosal Declaration since 2007 until 2020. And I'm hoping that we can find a way of giving life to it when we meet in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in July of this year. And my respectful view is that if we can find common ground on this Rosal Declaration, it would address in large measure the deficiency in implementation which we've had at CARICOM for its entire lifetime. And I look forward to this meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where we can advance this issue very much. So, Prime Minister, on behalf of all of us, we want to say publicly, thanks for your chairmanship and the very, very important 2 days for the regional integration process and for CARICOM and for the citizens and residents of our community.
Thank you, Prime Minister Skerritt. I would just say that, like everything else in life, life is about process, and building an integration movement is as much about process as it is substance. This meeting was in every respect a working meeting and has allowed us to add serious value and to move the needle with respect to almost every issue that we had to deal with here today. And therefore, against that background, as you thank me, I can only say to you that this is only possible because member states have come with the will for us to move forward, generally speaking, the needle to ensure that we can provide more tangible benefits to our individual citizens. So make the floor available. Esther, you want to add anything?
Any questions?
Just any
Okay. Question?
questions?
Identify.
Yes, please, as usual, I see familiar faces. Just identify yourself and the media house, and I'm sure there are many questions to be asked.
Prime Minister Motley, Shane Jones from CBC News in Barbados. You spoke of a comprehensive report received from the regional private sector that dealt with things like the regional food import bill and savings of over $400 million US. My question is, were any suggestions made in terms of an overall ease of business in the region from the private sector?
Yes, that was one of the things that we are looking at. Indeed, I just opened the book to the exact page, which is a feat given that it is over 200 pages. So that is a case of divine intervention. But we agreed that the inclusion of the ease of doing business indicators is absolutely critical to any successful investment on the part of the private sector. And each of us has our role to play. And they have identified the potential areas where they believe that they can participate in order to have this savings of about $400 million US in import bill. And at the same time, they have identified the areas where they believe that whether it is in model legislation for animal and plant health, or whether it is in how we deal with the protocols governing inspection and approval procedures for the trade in animal products and animals, or whether it is in other trade protocols, we have to be able to remove a lot of the, or to simplify, not remove, simplify a lot of the bureaucratic difficulties without compromising the public purpose. In Barbados, I use 4 questions to help us identify how we are going to deconstruct and reconstruct. And that is asking yourself, what is really the public purpose you're trying to defend? What is the public mischief that you're fighting against? Can you use technology to do this more effectively? And who are the beneficiaries or the classes that are likely to be discriminated against? And in every instance, I can say that based on what the private sector has asked us, we will have to be able to make those determinations to see how best, country by country by country, but we recognize that in some instances, we have a Caribbean Agricultural Health and Safety Association already, CAFSA, and that we may need, instead of creating new institutions, to better amplify the role of CAFSA and to ensure that it has the resources to be able to do what is necessary for seamless trade across the entire community.
Prime Minister, good evening. Barry Allen from the Nation newspaper here in Barbados. We spoke to Prime Minister Rowley.
Your voice is so gentle that I think that you may be elsewhere.
We spoke to Prime Minister Rowley earlier today, and he gave us a little snippet regarding the fact that you guys had thoroughly discussed a way forward with which member states could deal with crime and violence and social disruption. Would you be willing to elaborate a little bit on what conclusions you reached, if any?
Yeah. As I said, we will have a summit in the very near future. But I think that the fundamental point is this, that you cannot solve this problem purely through law enforcement. And that we recognize that the source of the problem is a broader societal problem that requires a societal solution, of which the government is only but one of the players. And we're talking about not just how do you solve murders, we're really talking about how do you resolve violence and conflict within our families, within our communities, within our countries. And to that extent, we also recognize that there are some insidious things happening. You're going to hear us talk more about it in Barbados over and over, and some of my ministers have already been given the task. How many people in this room know what purple drank is, or lean? How many people in the media who are questioning us? What is purple drank? What is lean? And you are on the front line of the media. This is perhaps one of the worst things that's happening throughout the region. It's one of the negative things that they have taken up from, as we would say, over and away. And all it is cough syrup, Jolly Ranchers, and Sprite. And regrettably, too many of our young children are using it. And in using it, it literally makes them go into being a different person. That the level of sugar, I'm told, when going into the bloodstream, combined with the codeine and the other things, is having a deleterious impact. And in some instances, people don't even remember what they were doing when they were high. Now, I am old enough to know, as are many in this room, that we have gone through bad epidemics before in terms of drugs. We went through the crack epidemic in the early 80s, mid-80s, and we came out. But we have to work together across the region, first with the parents, so that the parents can recognize what are the threats to their children's stability and do something about it. Now, at the end of the day, a child who is high, a young person who is high, and who is not in full control of their capacities may end up doing something that they would not do if they were not. And if they have access to weapons, which regrettably are all too available in our societies today, then what they might have done 30 years ago with a rock or a piece of 2x3, they are now doing today with automatic weapons. And that is the insidious nature of what we're confronting. The fact that the majority of you in the media still didn't know what it was tells you that it is still very much, and I learned about it from 11 and 12-year-olds. I must confess, okay? And it is only in going around in the last few weeks and trying to understand what is happening that you begin to recognize that this thing is a serious issue. And unlike other drugs that may bring you down, this one apparently does even stranger things to the young people or the human beings that are affected. I see one or two of you nodding because you obviously know. And what can be more innocent than Jolly Ranchers and hard candy? Bad for you from a point of view of health, but we never associated it as a substance which, when abused, could lead to all kinds of psychotropic behavior and other types of activities that flow from drug abuses. Okay? So we're going to have this summit. We recognize that our young people may also be influenced more, in some instances, by pastors who are charismatic, by sportsmen, by artists, by teachers, by nurses, by doctors, by other people in the community who run cultural groups or community groups. Sometimes children can't speak to their parents. So that we feel that we have to have a multidisciplinary approach. I'd like to call and reference the example of Bermuda. Bermuda shared, and the Deputy Premier is here, they shared, having gone through really bad episodes with crime, having spent hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars bringing in advice from outside. At the end of the day, it is a homegrown, multi-sectoral approach. There's a lot of fancy language to say you got to care. One that picks up those children who are being put out of school at 16 instead of leaving them on the street. One that looks at those families who are falling through the cracks. One that teaches our children how to be able to resolve conflict without wanting to resort to violence to be able to do so. But it is only going to happen when we do this according to scale. In order to transform the society, you need scale. And to that extent, therefore, what the prime ministers and heads of government have agreed is that we need to bring everybody together, set a common mission. And once we set that common mission, then each work their part to pursue and achieve that mission. And therefore, it cannot be government alone, but all of the, what do we call it, the partners, the regional multi-state partners, and civil society generally. Okay?
Any more questions?
Hi, yes. Good evening. Jerome Sawyer from Our News in the Bahamas. I wanted to reference the deliberations on Haiti. Specifically, are you able to give us any idea on what you're hoping that mission or the fact-finding mission to Haiti might achieve? Also, you may have alluded to the fact that there were some differing opinions or even disagreements on a way forward for Haiti. Are you able to share with us what they may have been, and specifically for us, what the Bahamas' position might be, as we are one of two countries you mentioned that really feels the impact from unrest in Haiti?
Prime Minister Skerritt answered it. I don't think there were no different positions on Haiti. I think that our sensitivity is that we need, and I spoke to President Moise this morning, we need to ensure that the Secretariat is allowed to come in there with a fact-finding mission. We recognize that there is instability that is not only affecting the well-being of the people of Haiti, but it is now having an impact on the people of the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos. And we recognize that, therefore, the first thing we need to do is to have clarity as to what is transpiring, what is causing it, how it can be resolved, and at the same time, to be able to work as a community to minimize the negative impact of persons putting their life at risk. Because if you go in a small boat with some of the swells that we have seen across the region recently, people are going to die. And then those who don't die don't know what they're going to face when they go to another country where they are literally hiding and trying to literally survive, and they have no means of easy and ready survival. So this is not an easy issue. It's a complex issue, and Prime Minister Secretariat has made that clear. But the first step is for us to have the legitimacy of and the integrity of facts that we can rely upon, and that thereafter we then work with the relevant players to see how best we can, one, work with Haiti to ensure that they don't face instability within their boundaries, and two, that as a result, there are no negative consequences to the people of the Bahamas or to the Turks and Caicos. And, you know, I've been around long enough to know that difficult discussions are not often welcome, but they are, at the end of the day, what are necessary in order to be able to gain progress and to move forward. And I'm satisfied. The Haitian Foreign Minister came this morning. We were able to engage with him as a whole. I was also able to speak at a personal level to President Moise. The heads are engaged. We will be meeting again for the CARICOM Mexico Summit in 3 weeks' time, and therefore we anticipate that before then, the Secretariat will be able to give us the results of the fact-finding mission, which will have, along with the Secretary General, officials from Bahamas, Jamaica, and Barbados with the Secretary General. Roosevelt, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I mean, I echo the sentiments, Chairman. The number of players in the Haitian situation. So it's not only the government, you have the private sector, you have civil society, you have a number of opposition parties involved. And so unless we have the facts, one cannot determine what is the way forward. And we have to be very careful as a community that we do not delegate our responsibility to Haiti. And we must not appear in any way to have what has become, in many parts of the world, Haiti fatigue. And we recognize that Haiti is part of the community, and we have a responsibility and a duty and an obligation to assist in a member state in unraveling its challenges and to work with them towards lasting solutions. But that finding a solution to the present impasse will not solve Haiti's problems for the future. And therefore, we need to engage Haiti and indeed the international community on the economic and social development of Haiti, and to look at the fiscal challenges confronting Haiti, the issues of debt, the issues of development, and to work with Haiti in developing a strategy that would bring lasting economic and social transformation to Haiti, including healthcare, including education and training, etc.
Any other questions?
Mary Claire Williams, CMC News. You all said that you would be giving more attention to the question of free movement of skilled nationals. Can you elaborate on that, and exactly what are some of the issues that you all will be dealing with? I know there have been concerns about the amount of red tape that that nationals have to go through to resettle in another country.
As we indicated, extensive work was done on the free movement of labor throughout the Caribbean community. And in this document, we had suggested that we have everybody captured, every category captured in this. As you know, we've started on a phase basis with university graduates, etc., and we're coming down the ladder. And it was always felt that we must not let the Caribbean citizens believe that it would be only a selected few who would enjoy this fundamental right of movement. And so there was not only a recommendation for all categories to be considered, but this also spoke about a procedure in managing this movement, and also it dealt with contingent rights. The issue of contingent rights was always a contentious issue, and what we have decided at this meeting, especially considering the intervention by the private sector and the labor movement, to bring this document back to the table. And that document came about from a wide cross-section of consultations with the private sector, civil society, the trade unions, member states. And so we will bring it back to heads. We intend to re-engage the stakeholders so we can freshen up the document if we have to. And it will be presented to heads at the meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the heads' consideration. But we maintain that the free movement is central to the integration process, integration movement. And as we have seen, the fear of half of a country moving to the other has not happened. Obviously, in these things, you'll always have administrative challenges in certain member states from time to time. In large measure, it is not that the government does not have the system in place or the legislation in place. It's always about personalities. And therefore, it's important for us to separate systems from personalities and legislation from personalities. So let us look at it, and of course, we will engage you, the media, on it, because you're an important stakeholder, and so that you can share your views on this document and on the issue of free movement within the Caribbean community.
I'd just like to add to that, too, that on that matter, we'd like to thank the government and people of Jamaica for their generous offer to be able to operationalize assistance to member states with respect to technical and vocational education and training covering tuition assessment and certification, and also equipment with ultraviolet lights that will allow us to be able to better determine whether a certificate is fraudulent or not. So these things all add up. In our own case in Barbados, we would have spoken to the fact that we have shifted the burden of proof, where we are prepared to be able to give the applicant the benefit of the doubt pending a more thorough due diligence of the certificate. But in so doing, should the certificate turn out to be fraudulent, it will be revoked. And the reality is that 99% of the certificates received are in good order. So that if you have a lengthy process that makes people wait, there's really no reason for it. Similarly, we have a security system, I referred to it earlier, the Joint Regional Communications Center, that allows us to be able to do checks against Interpol and other databases, security databases, to see whether there are issues that we need to be aware of. And that is of major assistance to individual territories. So against those backgrounds, there ought not to be the kind of bureaucracy or, on the other hand, angst on the part of the applicant, because it should be a far more seamless environment. And finally, to underscore Prime Minister Skerritt's point, we've had freedom of movement in a number of key categories for years now, and it has done nothing to destroy our societies. I want to reiterate that part of the difficulty in the region is that we just do not have enough people coming to work every day, working to add value, to pay taxes, to secure growth. And it is a conversation that we're going to have to continue to have within the region and to manage the migration far better than we're doing.
We have had a fairly extensive presentation, and there's one more.
Yes. Good evening, Wendy Burke, Starcom Network. We spoke of giving support to the Commonwealth Secretariat in the upcoming election, but we know that there were also others here seeking CARICOM support in their bids for election, Canada and also the OAS. Can you tell us if a position has been made on those other two?
Well, there was nobody from the OAS seeking support here today, so we can dismiss that once and for all. In respect of Canada, Ireland, and Norway have all approached us, not just this meeting, but the last meeting, because of their bids for Security Council. These things happen all the time. St. Vincent, as you know, is the smallest country in the world ever to be elected to the Security Council, and those are things that are par for the course. With respect to the Commonwealth Secretary General, the situation is slightly different. The Baroness Scotland is and has been the candidate proposed by a member state, Dominica, and Antigua, I believe on the last occasion.
Belize.
And Belize. And I wish I was there, because if I was there, Barbados would have been one of the proposers too. So I say that for the record. And we are happy with the work, as Prime Minister Skerritt said, that she has done for the countries of the region. We are happy for the work she has done for the countries in the Pacific and Africa. And we believe that every other Commonwealth Secretary General who has performed, and not even perhaps as much, has had the benefit of a second term. And therefore, we overwhelmingly support her re-election.
Thank you very much,